Let's take a quick look at Texture Guide. It's a UV tool that is really handy, but it's almost always overlooked. So we'll create a quick object. Under Primitives, we'll choose Platonic Solid Tool, N for numeric, and for shape, let's pick an 8-sided object here. Okay, and let's plan to just UV map this polygon because it should demonstrate the Texture Guide in action. I'm going to go ahead and give this a name, and we'll give it a color. Okay, just so we know that this is the polygon we want to work with. If we were to do a planar UV map down the Z, we can see that there's our shape, but this is the shape it would give us. If we were to do it in the Y, well, here's our shape, but this is the shape it would give us. So we really need to map it in this axis, which isn't one of our options using the standard T for texture, new. We've got planar, cylindrical, spherical, and we have atlas, and we can pick the XYZ axis here. But let's go ahead and take a look at Texture Guide. So I'm going to move over to Map. For texture, let's choose Texture Guide, N for numeric, and let's make a new UV map. We'll call this triangle, and let's switch over to UV texture. Okay, so we can already see that it's mapping it based off of, if I didn't have make UVs active, it wouldn't automatically do it, but I have it active here, and we can see that it's mapping it. Let's size it up. Okay, so I'm changing my scale here just by clicking and dragging, kind of like working with the box tool before we commit. Okay, and we can see, well, there's our shape. We can see the axis that it's on, and it's not working out all that well for us. Y, same thing, and I could size this out as well. That's not really working out all that well for us, and of course X wouldn't as well. It gives us the same shape, but not the shape that we want. It's not the shape of our polygon. Okay, and we could go in here and manually edit this, or we could come over to, let's do Z, and then here's our guide. Let's choose rotate, and let's rotate it in the heading, and let's try -45, and that gets us a pretty good angle there, but we also need to move it in the pitch. So let's try 30, and that's close. Let's use the mini slider, and we'll rotate it like this. So roughly, tweak it a little bit more, but roughly we've got the same shape, and we're doing a planar map. But with the rotation, that comes in handy. And we could leave it at that, but I'd like to show you just a few more things. We've got the same thing going on. Let me zero this out for the rotation. If we were to use a cylindrical map, which is the wrong type of map to use for this, but I just want to point out, if we put it in the Y, that's where our seam is going to take place on a cylindrical map. I can always rotate that 90 degrees, and now our seam on our cylindrical map is going to take place there. And I can visually see the guide here, which is kind of nice. Being able to see that guide can be handy when you're first getting started with UVs and you're not quite sure what axis to map with or what type of mapping. You got spherical, cubic, which is a handy option. But then the last one is something that you don't have in the standard UV editing tools that has been a lifesaver for me at times. Under mapping, to choose camera. Okay, and let's just zero this out. So by default, we get a guide here that's our camera guide, and I'm just going to grab the camera and move it. Okay, and I can do this in the perspective window. Try and line it up there. Okay, and maybe move it up a little bit. Just kind of putting the camera where I think it needs to be. And then I can always move the camera in. That's sizing it up in the UV grid, and move it out. Okay, so I can position my camera, and I actually changed the the scale a little bit whenever I click. So I'm just going to click and open it up a little bit more. When I clicked in the perspective window, I sized it down a little bit. But so just by moving this around, you can see, look over at the UV texture in the viewport, you can see I'm seeing it in real time, which is really handy. And sometimes if you're trying to get a specific angle, the camera view can be just the tool to get you there. So that's just a quick look at the texture guide for creating UV maps.